One of the greatest scraps we've ever seen. As the Orks rise to the top, it's only natural that other challenger war bosses arise and meet you at the top. As for Orks this weekend, we've seen one of the greatest WAAAGHs ever witnessed came to life as we Orks faced off for first place. As Orks have made a big push in the meta overall, everyone's on notice and people want to know who's biggest and best. So this week on WAAAGH Wednesday, we have the stats and the facts, the honorable mentions, and then coverage of the top performing Ork list. So shout out to the Gits in chat. Whoa! Be sure to like and sub if we do a good job enough. And welcome to everybody who's here. Shout out to the chat. Look at you guys. Let's look at the stats and the facts as always. So with us, we have Stats Hubert up here. Shout out to this Git. Looking at Orks overall, we were in 49 win rate overall, which is pretty solid, bit of 50 for War Horde, which is specifically the most played detachment by far. Yet for a 50% win rate for like almost army wide, as in every detachment can get to that rate, is pretty outrageous. And one of the ones that people are surprised about would be maybe Tactical Brigade with one of the lower win percentages. But I do think a lot of people are looking to kind of experiment with this detachment, even though War Horde is just clearly best. As we if shout out to War Games Live, who had the Ork performing list that did win. Now it's not showing here on the stats. Shout out to Stats Hubert, but he did not put it up here. But Orks did win that one, so we're gonna cover that GT today with Dice. Death 5 is what it was called. And he was using War Horde. And it was funny listening to the commentary because both players were kind of agreeing like they hate the tension behind using War Horde, but it's so powerful that it's so alluring, right? And shout out to chat because right here, isn't War Horde the get to know your army detachment? Chat's kind of saying, and you would think that as yeah, it is, which means you would think that is in generally that's sometimes the most kind of baseline and not top performing detachment sometimes. But for Orcs specifically and some other armies, this baseline detachment is the most powerful and consistent one, especially now with the gas changes. And a lot of us didn't see how big that would be at first, just because you were like, well, just gas change and a couple points units, we didn't care since the data slate. But it was such a big difference on what gas has done. And it's really just swung just overall how War Horde's potential when they nerfed a lot of our prior predatory units. So it was a mixture of both. We lost some of our predatory matchups, which would be like Death Guard to a certain degree. And then Gaz just kind of countered a lot of our problematic issues, which sometimes we just didn't hit hard enough on the crackback. The distance that he covers, the Boyz being there to soak up and also score and touch damage. It's so consistent and so much things going on that even the players that were playing and performing with this list at the top table were both agreeing how it was tense and it was, but it was just too powerful to kind of pass up. And that's what a lot of our Ork players are kind of seeing. And that's what you're seeing with the numbers. So even though I personally do also encourage all the time, and I do greatly support that other detachments can do well, and the stats have consistently been showing that you can play Cult of Speed, Green Tide, you can play the Hunt and Bully Boys and have quite effective win rates in games. Not winning GT so far, but of course in your local meta you could really perform. Yet for the people who are really trying to get the best out of their detachment, are kind of snuff that we were doing so bad prior and they want to get back some of those games and event wins, War Horde is just so intoxicating for how it plays, not only like a linear but a reliable, at least to the Ork extent, gameplay. But with that being said, I think Orcs should be encouraged. It's not so much right now that you should be alarmed for getting nerfed. That was one of the things I think we were all worrying about. As Orcs have been progressing and people have been performing, and this is our baseline detachment, so that means they have a lot of newer players going out there and kind of sometimes not messing up, but bringing down lower weight, quote unquote, is how other people look at it. But there's so much consistency of at least intermediate and performing overall Ork list, that it's kind of kept our win rate in a solid zone where it's not looking for getting, nerf hammered, and Gaz isn't looking too much performance, not too many events win. 2 events wins is like just enough to be respectable, get on people's radar, not be necessarily teched for against. And so it's pretty great place to be on Orks right now. This late to an edition, it almost feels like we're finally at least evening out, even though the meta as a whole is looking absolutely great. So shout out to those gits that are out there performing with every other detachment. I'm a big fan of Cult of Speed, Green Tide shining again, which is very exciting. The gas changes even helped bully Boyz. So shout out to all you gits, and shout out to our war boss, Wicked Joe. Nice to see you back with Todd and WAAAGH, the gifted memberships. Whoa! We have our after action reports coming, guys, right here. They're working on. So that being said, you'll be able to see how some of the orcs were performing here, and things that I cover there are gonna be reflected on this orc games that we're going to cover, right? You're going to see a lot of reflection on things that I had to do in real time that were bad and good. So thank you very much, Wicked Joe. Now it's time to move on to the honorable mentions. So, of course, like always, if you're here live, make sure you pick one of these lists when we do we're going to do a vote right now, and whatever ends up winning the live voting will be the list that I go to and start coveraging and looking through too. So as you can see, we got 2 Cult of Speed and 2 War Horde lists. We have Stephen Adams, 5-1 Battle Salvation War Horde, Johan Hestaf with a Cult of Speed, Brandon Owens with a Battle Brothers GT with another Cult of Speed, and then Joseph P with the 6-2 3-day events with the War Horde. So any of those, do your votes right now. Shout out to the live gets, shout out to the rewatch gang, because sometimes we cover lists that people mention in there, bring up, or are really excited to see. So of course, if you're there, make sure to say it, and of course any people I missed. So thank you to that, and anybody who's there. Of course, it's live, so say what you guys got to say. I read it and I go hard in the chat. So thank you, everybody who's here. And I think it's time now that I make sure you guys are getting stuck in with the vote. Like people are saying, yeah, Gladius is like the all around as well. And that's another good example. Orks are old school detachment guys. It feels great right now to be playing War Horde for sure. Even I had been turned off by it, but Gaz change made me have a lot of fun in my games. So let's go. He said 2-year flags. Let's go, boys. So shout out to the chat and everybody. Like I said, you guys keeping everything live, keeping us going strong. And it means a lot. And it goes a long way. So thank you for that. So then we move on to the winning orc list. Lukas Troller's 5-0 War Horde list had Dicing Death GT. So here we have it up here for those who are watching visually as the event. We have Dice Day. It was pretty nice. It was a pretty legit event because you had to pay like $100 to get into the event. I think it was. So even though it was only 4 players, everybody was definitely wanted to be there, was trying to perform. So it wasn't just because sometimes people go, well, the size of the event. Well, sometimes there's sharks in there, and it seemed like there was other shark tanks. Interesting matchup that was missed that I'm sure a lot of people would be interested to see as well. Would be this Dark Angels matchup, who also went undefeated at the event and didn't match up with the orc players at the end. So that's kind of cool. Would have been interesting to see as well. But one thing to say is shout out to War Games Live. So check them out on YouTube. They had this. You can go. It was on day 2. It was the last game of the event. You can watch this live for some peak performances and moments and it's deployments and such. But of course, I'm going to cover how some point the big points in that game without giving a entire play-by-play and talking your ear off. Just enough so people understand some context and how close it was, and very exciting. It was one of the best games I watched personally, and I was like getting worked with tense war boss. What would I do here? So I know everybody feels that kind of way, but we're gonna walk through it here as well because it's gonna be a great time. Before I look through his path to victory, shout out to chat's going off right now. We also had his list. So let's take a look at his list. A lot of it is what we would consider meat and potatoes, consistent, but some tech here that I think he found very valuable and important, and something that I've shown and talked about here and used myself that isn't necessarily an auto take, but it's known throughout the orc community. Yet we've seen Lukas using it here. So we have the nice meat and potatoes of a beast boss. I think he actually utilized his beast bosses quite well within the patience, which we'll talk about as we looked at through his games and everything. Is he would with the beast boss, how efficient it is outside of the wall, especially in War Horde. It's one of the few orc units because of its strength threshold, the amount of bodies, the beast boss himself allow it to actually do something with non-wall turns, which were very important in the final matchup of this game, where you've seen a lot of people just whiffing back and forth. It was very hilarious to see. But the beast boss is cool because he can either go early or go late. So very valuable. I always got to bring at least one. And so did this get. Then we have the Big Mac with Follow Me Lads with the Drilla and Custom Mega Blaster. Of course, that's going to be alongside Gazgul Thraka. Those guys just deployed on the table, just happy to be out there. Very important. They're going to pop Here We Go on their go turn. It's very important, very vital unit. I love it. How it's been swinging the game, but we'll talk about that a little bit more. We have a basic mech, as I was saying, for the tech pieces that were a little bit uncommon or under kind of appreciated sometimes. The basic mech utilizing a truck with 12 tank busters inside of it, right? So this baby mech is really intended to walk around, sometimes do actions, sometimes assist you in other secondaries, like he counts as a whole unit for display of might, for example, and such like that. So the mech on his own will follow the truck, get loan out from it, and then be poking it for its +1 to hit using firing deck. It really makes for an anti-infantry, anti-elite infantry, or sometimes mob unit that can shoot out of the truck, peek corners, threaten enemy firing lanes. And it seemed to be very important in all of his matchups and in the final games that he ended up playing as well. I've loved the piece, right? A lot of times people just think of the flash kits shooting or the tank busters jumping out and shooting. When you incorporate the mech, you're not only hitting on forward, but your unit's safe for any return fire, and it's easier to cut angles and get developed speed and such, and utilize the speed of the truck. So I really like that combo, but seeing it in War Horde was kind of surprising, right? So even though I use it in Dread Mob and I use it in Cult of Speed, War Horde is something that people are not typically teching for that kind of combo anymore. We've seen it early in the meta. Lukas Troller also, we've seen him early in the meta when you could run 6 trucks and 3, what was it, a different Ork transport before I got a codex. So very familiar with Lukas overall, how very efficient of a player he is. So I like that he was using that piece, and I think that the whole Ork community should very consider it, right? If you're going to pay, a lot of the time, not everybody has to do this, or well, has to, like I'm saying, has to do this, but we'll develop, especially on GW layouts specifically, because how big the firing lanes are and important. They kind of always have to interact with them and threaten your enemy with them. Taking tank busters with the mech versus just taking them on their own, or bringing a third unit, or bringing a character, is something we should be very much considering. Then we have the War Boss and the Pain Boy with Cunning Babru, which I absolutely love. Like I talk about whenever I talk about War Horde or running this kind of meat and potatoes archetype where you have multiple mobs of boys. The Pain Boy unit being less, threatening in this case than Gaz's mob means that it's going to definitely be less of a priority on the enemy, but it's definitely going to always go on the same go turn as Gaz. Meaning if the enemy can't or doesn't commit to this unit fully, it can fall back, interact with the enemy again, regrow some more boys, swap more objectives, gets very potent. So then you have a sense of urgency on the enemy. Do I fight the Gaz unit or absolutely overkill it, or do I try to kill both of them to diminish it? It's a lot for anybody to choose in real time. So a lot of time it's hard to get that custom, that cunning but brutal, but I definitely appreciate it and always try to bring it if I can. And these, like this kind of archetype where the War Horde is trying to have its go turn and you have another big asset, because you're very, elite or low unit count to a certain degree on this list. Not that much, but 4 Orks. Then you have, of course, the 10 Snaggers, the 220-man unit of Boyz, 2 trucks, and a battle wagon for the transport roles on how it's going. Very consistent for what we're seeing and what I would enjoy too. One, if you're going to bring 1 wagon, typically 2 trucks for SWAT teams, like I said, for the firing deck of the truck, for just playing with your snaggers more efficiently because they want to play independently. Trucks are always invaluable in that case. 1 Gretchen unit. If you can bring 2, people like to do it, but you can get away with just 1 because the Mandos. So the Mandos, you're going to split them into 2 units. You can keep 1 unit back, 1 unit forward, and in some cases, people will use that second unit to screen. In some cases, they'll use 1 to be a throwaway trash unit or keep interacting and scoring or blocking people just standing in ways. And I think people underappreciate the staying power of commandos when the enemy really doesn't feel like investing into them, which happens a lot in a lot of games. And you've seen them also if you're watching War Games live, or if you start to use them in their 5-man units. They don't just fall over necessarily because the enemy can't always get enough firepower on them or doesn't want to get enough firepower on them and end up risking getting charged. So it's pretty awesome. Then we have 3 5-man units of Storm Boys. They seemed very valuable from the games watching live. And when he was talking about it himself, he really felt it, the 5-man Storm Boys, from what I heard from his game, right? And shout out to Lukas. If I can get a interview with him or to any degree of conversation with him, shout out to the chat. If you guys reach out to him, let him know. That'd be awesome. If he's willing. If not, I totally understand. But I thought it was just awesome to see him play and how he pulled the games through with this list. But he, from what I heard and what I understood, really found the 3 5-man use of Storm Boys invaluable, which is somewhat of an adjustment to what Orks had been naturally doing. Now, don't kid me, you gets, right? I know a lot of you guys out there have cut at least one of your Storm Boy units, if not 2 of your Storm Boy units from your list to just fit more other stuff onto your list. And I think it's very nice that he just paid for the 5, and it seemed very important because you need the speed of these guys that they bring, because once everybody starts getting stuck in, the 20-man mobs and the trucks are kind of moving around, the field's really clogged up. Other infantry aren't really going to get past these big combat mosh pits, and you still get advance and charge from it, access from grenades, getting in the way. It just becomes very interesting and helpful more late games, as long as you don't throw them away all the time too early. Sometimes people get too eager with them and they die too early. Then we have the 2 tank buses, like I said, which were in a truck. Boom. So Beast Snaggle use boss unit in a truck, 2 tank busters, and then the next standing next to a truck, and then centralized battle wagon with a 20-man unit of Boyz with the Pain Boy and the War Boss. Typically, that's how the transport loadout went. So let's take a look at his path to victory, because I think that's what people really want to see, and then we can end it with the great orc on orc matchup at the end, where I had a little bit of we're going to talk through a little bit of that. And yeah, of course, check out War Games Live. Such an asset to the community. Shout out to Joe. He's such a great dude, and he was giving really good insight as someone who doesn't play Orcs but is a fan of Orcs. He actually has a good head on his shoulders for what's going on, which is not surprising considering you play Space Wolves, right? So he understands combat, what's going on. So great job to him, as this commentary was actually pretty solid, right? I'm not going to say actually, because we know he's solid, but to hear other people talk about Orcs is always reassuring to us as Orc players, right? We feel seen. So let's get into the path to victory. So as his first game, and I think also someone's saying in chat that there was a second game on War Games Live with Joe. With Troller as well. I didn't see that one, but that's fantastic. If you can check that one out too in the chats, or leave it in the chat after the video. Let people know, spread the love. And if you do go check out War Games Live, say WAAAGH, or leave a like, or say what's up for him, so he knows what's up with the great WAAAGH, that we own him. So he says, is it a Horde meta? It's funny that the enemy put that. I thought that was funny to put forward considering what this matchup was going into Lukas. So he went to 2 captains with jump packs, 2 librarians, a lieutenant, and then Vulcan Heastan. 2 units of tactical marines. What they come with? Looks like they came with multi-meltas. Okay, makes sense for salamanders, right? And then 2 units of rhinos, followed by 1 unit of company heroes. Very consistent unit we're seeing brought with the Space Marines nowadays. 1 unit of devastators. Okay. 1 land raider with the flamers, of course. Predator Annihilator, a scout squad, 2 big bricks of vanguards with a jump pack with the hand flamers, which is interesting because when they get close to you, they get additional strength on them. They have dev wounds potential on their units, so good multi-phase damage. What's very important in this matchup is they want to meet you and bang it out in the middle. And when you do make enough contact with enough of their assets, it takes them too long to kind of burn you away sometimes. So if you let them get the jump on you, and they have really efficient matchups, like they disembark you and then charge you and melt and flame your guys getting out of the wagon, of course, they can definitely devastate you. But if you play the aggressive style that you can see Lukas playing when you see him live, you can see that you can typically get the first punch on the enemy, clean some of their more important assets like that land raider, which would be annoying to be in combat with, and pull whale out of your boys, chew through them real quick with maybe gas, for example, take the mid table, make sure the game's always happening on the other side of either the midway point or past it. And when you watch Lukas play, whether it's I've seen him in the past or we were seeing here at this event, he always makes sure that even if it's early game and he's losing bodies, that there's some kind of interaction of holding that mid-table line and not allowing the enemy to engage him on their terms, which is always important for us on Orks, right? There's a risk that they could, which was very important as we look at his later matchups, that he's aware of them, but he was mentally understanding when he had to be very aggressive, and sometimes, and I've seen that felt this way with this list as well. So 84-point win W there. Great job to that match, to that one. Not easy because manners can hit you pretty hard when you get there, so you don't want to dwindle too early. Then we go into the Grey Knights. So he has 3. Oh, they're playing that the Warbane. So very, very potent in death with the full rerolls from this detachment. And he has a bunch of Brotherhood librarians. They get their dev to their mortal wounds off when they really jump out and blow you up. Typically, that's kind of like their version of anti-tank to a certain degree. I mean, these Nemesis Dread Knights can pop trucks, but I'm saying for like a battle wagon, not too efficient at popping a wagon with most things on a typical Grey Knight list. Then we have Castellan Crow, 1 strike squad, 1 unit of Inceptors, 1 big unit. Oh, yeah, 1 big unit of the Purifiers, 1 small unit of Purifiers, 2 small unit Purifiers, a Storm Raven gunship. Right when I was saying not good at killing the wagon. I would say that's not really the most effective at killing the wagon, but at least they can risk it, right? They can threaten it a little bit now. A Cladius Assassin, and then 1 Vigilant Squad, which is those, I think those guys with the shotguns. Okay, I thought they were with the shields with their shotguns. All right, that's an interesting take right there. Big important mid-table playing with them. These guys, remember, a lot of people are worried, well, they're going to Armor of Contempt on me, and they try to slow play it too much. I think, again, this is one of those armies you have to get into and take away their asses because they're so elite. Understand that they can only Art of Contempt on 1 unit, and then everybody else is just kind of taking 3-up saves, and you're volume them down, and they're not usually really good at interacting with the transport type units, right? So can't risk your Gazgul, right? Chat's already going off like, yeah, exactly. The Castellan Chrome Purifier Squad is a very, very potent, threatening unit, and it could get you on Overwatch because how they get the reroll hits now on this. But with the existence of like a ship, typically you kind of lose the ground presence, and as you're kind of playing that mid-table with your cheaper chaff units, once you give enough stuff forward to start cleaning up some of the orc chaff units or delivering that early game damage, you can deliver that wall, which is what you see him typically doing when he's playing this army, right? And then so in 87, so it was actually one of his biggest wins, that one. So even though a lot of time more players like, I'm scared, on paper he can delete my most threatening units, it's on what terms is he finally getting to that threatening unit. If you've already annihilated half his army and he only has that Purifier Squad for the gas units, like, cool, well, I still have everything else left. Like we talked about, he still has the other boy unit. But if they get it off on you first, guys, right? Can't play too passive. Have to play past that midpoint, because if they get it off on you first, that Grey Knight army is picking you up horrifically. So of course Lukas is just super effective because it's easier said than done to play with Orc against this with these Orcs. It's like almost like glass cannons, but not really. It's just because you can't let them disembark you. Then we have the World Eaters. Berserker Warband. So he has Demon Prince of Corn, Karn the Betrayer, Double Slaughterbound, 1 big. No, there's only a 10-man unit, right? Yeah, there's only a 10-man unit of Corn Zerkers. And then a Rhino. What's funny about these guys, right? This Rhino, I think it's overlooked a lot of times. And it's funny, I'll tell you a minor story. With my Zagra, I got close to one of these Rhinos not knowing what it could do. And what it can do is allow the Berserkers to get out when someone gets in range of this Rhino. So guess what I had to risk? Getting heroic almost. And it didn't happen, but it totally messed up my turn once they got out because I was hoping to wrap them. So that was early, but I'm just saying it's funny and overlooked, but know that when you're going into that matchup. If you want to wrap that, it's not happening like that. It's not going that way. 2 of the minimum size unit of Chaos Bombs, super efficient units. Scouting, advanced charge fast, they can get additional AP, very good at skirmishing and like tagging your units. Very happy when you have Mandos in this case to stop them from kind of doing that on one flank. 1 unit of 8-bound, 2 of the minimum size unit of 8-bound, followed by 2 minimum size unit of exalted 8-bound. That way, depending on the matchup, you know where to put their character. What's his name? Slaughterbound character. He is an 8-bound himself. But it's funny. He's like a little demon-possessed monster. It's kind of hilarious. And he's very, very killy. 1 double Forge Fiends with ectoplasmic cannons, and then double units of jackals. One of the interesting things is he doesn't have the warmongers, so he doesn't have his own infiltration, which is very, very helpful to us as an orc player, because 10 out of 10 games, I will just maximize my Mando squad to screen at least half the field and try to go first, lock them under deployment damn near if you can on one side, and then on the other side you get in the fight and start interacting with them. And they're just too efficient. They're efficient, but they're too elite. So a lot of fight on death CP management is super important in this one. So yeah, really great to see that. But remember, they can't really disbar your wagons either. And when I do the after action report, I'll show you how I kind of dealt with the world eaters. But nonetheless, great job right there. World eaters are a very, very popular army. You're going to see them. They're like 3 times more played than orcs last time I checked. So an 85-point win there by Lukas, just putting it in the bag. Then we have his 4th matchup, which is actually his lowest scoring matchup. Might have been the mission, not necessarily sure. Which is to Adeptus Mechanicus, which, Mechanicus on paper, with the rules and everything you can do, is one of those hard matchup by orcs. But then it comes down to, can the player pull it off, and is the right matchup. So Halo Creed is the actual most efficient version of the AdMech right now. You get a bunch of like different command. People aren't sure, so I'm going to slightly tell you what I know about AdMech to a certain degree, and I have played against this matchup. Not specifically this list, right? But Halo Creed will allow you to get buffs like additional movement. You can give stuff additional toughness. You're going to have a lot of units. You're going to be able to pick multiple units for these buffs. You have Balustrade Claws for reroll hits. And then some of these units can, and as you can see, he actually only has 1 character, which is something I noticed as well, is that they don't need a lot of characters to operate as an army. So they can spend a lot of their points on units, and some of these units are actually really killy outside of needing a character. So I like to see it, at least with the rerolls. They have other buffs that they can do as well, but just to understand, it's almost like giving orders, but better. Better. Or giving tactics, but better. Sorry, orc tactics. So we have 2 units of their basic rangers, 1 transport Dune Rider, pretty decent amount of small arms fire. If it can pull an angle on you, as firing deck as well. So that's actually risky to orcs that have like twin length and such for a lot of shots. 1 unit of the Iron Starter Ballistari with the triple las cannons. These guys as well can bump up a toughness. Not too interesting in the orc style, but their speed and their access to actually kind of being able to stay alive sometimes and not wanting to deliver on them could be threatening to your transports. But not so much that you should be so scared to stage up, to be honest. We have 2 units of the Skystalkers. Ooh, double units of these Cerberus Raiders. So these Cerberus Raiders, very, very annoying. So these guys are like mounted cavalry units that can scout forward. They move very quickly, very good for move blocking and getting in the way early for orc kind of stuff, so they can try to hinder your battle wagons and such. But you do have Mandos. So this is also why we're kind of telling you that Mandos are very important, at least if you're going out into the meta right now, which I'm sure you heard a lot, but you can see it in real time with a lot of these orc players. And then he has the Sky Stalkers. So this is their jump packy type units. They come from deep strike. When they shoot, then they can move. So again, another style of screen, getting in the way, which is what they're good at doing. They're trying to hold you at arm's length and then shoot you with DACA and kind of utilize Oath. But the units that aren't trying to utilize Oath would be these Rust Stalker units. So think of them how we look at our flash kits, but these guys are from melee. So you know how we look at our flash kits and we're like, this unit doesn't need a character, really good for its point cost, it can be brought in a big unit, it can fight other infantry. That's exactly what's going on with these Rust Stalkers. They're very fast, and then base like 8 movement or something, that they can get a +2. Then if they're near infantry, they can get another +1 or 2 to their charge or something like that. So they're essentially moving like 12, and then they can get they can advance in charge, and then they can also just beat the crap out of you because they're sitting at T4. They can get up to T5. They have a good amount of punches. They have 2 different melee profiles. So one is damage 1, looking for dev wounds, and then the other one is anti-infantry 3+ -2 damage for like 3 or 4 attacks on each unit, and they have 2 wounds apiece. So very problematic anti-infantry style of units, and they're cheap. They're 150 points for that unit, even cheaper than our flash kits. So they can get big chunks of flush out of you once they hold that arm's reach at you. We have triple disintegrators. Now, with a battle wagon with triple disintegrators and the the Iron Striders, now you have the wagon that's actually at risk. That being said, the fact that he brought so much killy kind of anti-tank, it looks like he doesn't have necessarily all this, and he has these big bricks, which are awesome, but they're not screens, right? So I do think that there's a chance that Troller did find a way. I don't know if the game's on War Games Live. Let them know, have the chat. Found a way to kind of utilize the Big Mac moving throw them and delivering hella damage, but nonetheless, 78-point win. Great job to see. Adam X is very about they're not a Xenos army, but you can almost consider them kind of like you're facing Orks or Ashramel Tarm or other Xenos, where don't be so scared of their output that you don't stage on them. Because once they do kind of come out and start holding you back and they have too much stuff, they're willing to trade bodies for points to that degree. And you'll just kind of start to lose too many assets before you can push enough of them off you. So yeah, so they're easier said than done, though, for sure. So great job from him by that. And I'd like to, if that game wasn't War Games Live, I'd definitely like to see. Then we go to his last game, which is the game we actually did watch on War Games Live, which was another Ork player. So Jonathan Serbert, whoa, to this kid. If this kid wants to get in contact too, I'd love to hear your perspective as well. If you ever up till for it, great job on the game. A lot of pressure, I'm sure. It was a great game, entertaining to watch. Enjoyed it a lot. So let's go over this kid's list. And welcome to the Great Wall, Jonathan, if you have never heard of us. So we have a War Horde list with a Beast Boss with Ed Wappa's Kill Chopper, which is kind of funny. He's like, I'm not even going to fall back in charge. Just know that if I'm still here, I'm still crumping in combat, anti-infantry, 4+. Then we have a Big Mac with Follow Me Lads, which was interesting in this game. When you watch it on War Games Live, you would initially think that Gaz with the Big Mac are going with this Follow Me Lads unit, but he had it on the Knobs unit. So not sure if that does something he did every game or would recommend for everybody, but it very much looked like that's exactly what he did in this game versus Lukas. Then he has a Big Mac with shock attack guns that here with tank busters, 1 unit of Basnikrat, a Gazgul Thraka that didn't have the Big Mac in this case, and then he had a War Boss with what was the other War Boss with? I forgot the other War Boss was with. And then Zagra War Snagger. Or did that? Oh no, actually no, he did. I'm lying. He had the Big Mac with Gazgul, but he had a he confused me. He had a Uftak, I'm pretty sure this is War Boss with the Knobs. So pardon me, guys. I just remembered what happened in the game. And then a Zagra Wartsnaga, which was interesting because you guys know I'm a big Zod fan. So when you're looking at the difference between this and Lukas's list, one of the big things you can see is he doesn't have the double big bricks of Boyz. Instead, he has Zod and he has a character for his tank busters, unlike Lukas, where he has one kind of a side of them and then another unit of tank busters. But both of them brought that beast beat that Beast Boss and Beast Snagger, of course. Love that unit. 1 unit of 20 boys, 3 trucks, no battle wagon, which is the other verse, right? This is what I really like to see is these are 2 very efficient styles and archetypes of Orks that were very similar yet very different. And it was very nice to see them both being played and make it to the top. 2 units of flash kits. Of course, one of those would be SWAT teamed with the Knobs, for example, and then the other one would be SWAT teamed with the tank busters to shoot the firing deck. 1 unit of minimum size Gretchen, a big unit of Gretchen for Zagra, and then 1 unit of Mandos, 1 unit of 5 Knobs. Like I said, that he did have the war boss. I was tripping when I said he didn't. He was just using a Uftak character. I don't know why I went over my head like that. And then 2 units of Storm Boys and 1 unit of tank boys, like I said earlier. So they both said they were really big fans of the Storm Boys, which were actually funny in this matchup. They ended up fighting it out all over Lukas's home objective. Like some Grots and some Storm Boys started getting into this big fight. So as for this game, it was very much about how do I say that? I don't want to break it down word play by play, but ultimately what was going on here was as Jonathan had the top of turn, the mission was terraform, and they started to terraform. He was utilizing his Snickrat and little trucks. He was creeping up with Zod. He was pretty much just trying to get a pounce jump on him, knowing that he can kind of play the secondary a little bit back, and Lukas was bottom of turn. So because of the mission, Lukas was kind of hurried, and he said, well, on turn 2, I'm definitely going to wall. And I think that is very important because how fast these units are, you can actually cover that mid-table distance. You see it in real time. But also, whenever it's this kind of melee on melee, we can both fight matchup, taking the first chunk of flesh out of the enemy is very, very, very important. Now, what was very interesting to see, and this is why I said it's one of the greatest games you'll ever see, is because on the go turn at the bottom of turn 2, when Luka comes out and he presses "Here we go," and he comes out and fights with gas, it's like I think it was like a 6-inch charge, and then he had to get like a 5 on the, no, he had to get like a 5 or a 6-inch, I think it was 5 or 6-inch charge onto, it was like a 5 on the truck and some multiple units he was fighting with his gas unit, and he failed it, then he re-rolled it, and he failed it again. He rolled like a 3 into a snake eyes. It was like some tremendous, chat saying it was a 4-inch charge, so I know it was like a 4 or 5. It was a very, very, very reliable charge, and he failed it on the go turn in the finals into the enemy. Huge deal. But the other unit that Lukas was able to actually make contact with Zaghrot's unit that had kind of creeped out of the deployment zone, and he ended up just cleaning that unit up. Now, Jonathan did kind of say, hey, well, I can heroic here with Gaz's unit, which is kind of still an interesting thing to do a lot of the time for protecting Zod's unit from just simply getting tagged outside of the wall. But that's only if Gaz can completely clean that unit up in response. But another 20-man unit of Boyz that has a pain boy out, Jonathan's 20 Boyz can't do that outside of the wall and risk being stuck in combat with that. So he chooses not to heroic. So Luka ends up destroying that on the bottom of turn 2, a Zod unit and just some Mandos, but then he's standing kind of in the open, which is very interesting. And at this point, a lot of people in the chat were most likely just saying game's over, it's done. But then they continued, right? So in response, turn 3, Jonathan calls his WAAAGH. The interesting part here is people can already predict this. At the end of this turn, at the end of Jonathan's turn, he's still gonna have his WAAAGH up defensively, and Luka's not gonna have any on his go turn. So he makes a bunch of defensive kind of maneuvers and decides to just kill what he can, which is the 20-man unit of Boyz. There are some ideas and contentions. You let me know in chat and rewatch gang. I do want to know what you guys think. Not from like we know better, right? We're side character. We're hindsight 2020, and we're in the back seat. None of us are saying we could perform any better, so there's no criticism to Jonathan. It was just a nice conversation having in chat where he chose not to charge Gaz's unit, the unit that had failed a charge. He had not charged it with a Snagga Boyz. The idea here is that then Gaz could interrupt, end up getting free kills and get some pylons out of there, possibly get closer to the enemy and get a free trade out of there. Or Jonathan could allow that, fought on death with that Snagga unit, and try to kill at least 10 of those Boyz right off the jump. So hindsight 2020, unsure what you guys think is the right play there. I want to see what chat has to say about that. But the other things that were going on here was when the Gaz unit went into the 20 Boyz with the pain boss, they one-shot that 20-man unit of Boyz, but the fight on death happened, of course. And it responded with Jonathan losing his entire Gaz unit. And the pain boy with the dirty syringe got Makari with his dev mortal wound at the end. So pretty crazy there how that ended up playing out. So then the game was on, right? Even though Luka has failed a 4-inch charge on the go turn at the bottom of turn 2, and the enemy now has a WAAAGH initiative to get into him, because of how the game goes, how dice swing, how Orks matchups are pretty chaotic, there's another swing in that direction. So now he was out a Gaz going into that turn, and the scores were pretty locked up, right? People are not necessarily sure of what's happening going to go in there, but Luka, because he was able to acquire an assassinate here, and they both tie going into prime secondary, but he was able to get an assassinate and no prisoners from that. His kind of go turn is ready to go turn. It meant that on the Jonathan's return, even though he was able to put a lot of secondaries up, he had already lost kind of a lot of stuff. And it's kind of at that point, as they in the chorus, like I'm not saying hindsight's 2020, as we've seen from Jonathan's tech and Jonathan's list intentionality, not Jonathan, sorry, Lucas' list intentionally is that the mech with the tank buster still being around to play late game, and his patience with this 10-man unit to beat Snagga Boyz, I think were also very important to him holding this game, because though Gaz went forward and the Snaggas went, I mean the Zod went the other Snagga, the Boyz went forward and Gaz went forward, and he staged up all his other vehicles and transports. Later for turn 3, 4, he still had his tank busters they were able to play. They were able to still shoot from within the trucks, getting the buff from the mech, so they were still interacting and helpful throughout the whole game. And in the alternate case for Jonathan's tank busters, because in this matchup there were no ideal things for him to come shoot at, and the aggression that Luka had put on him, he wasn't able to deliver his favorite firing lanes. Then the tank busters kind of felt a little bit more lackluster there as well, right? These are just minor critiques that we're talking about the difference between these units. The other difference, as someone who's a huge Zodgra War Snagga lover, is that when you don't have the wagon, this is what you risk from some fast armies. For example, if you play against World Eaters and they're able to tag either the back end of one of your Zod units with one of their scouting very fast type of units, or get a Goremonger to charge you, not interact with Zod too much, they can kind of mess up Zod into that degree. So you are paying for a cheaper unit to do a similar kind of thing to what a 20-man unit of Boyz would do. But this is the difference that you're paying for, is that if you pay for the wagon, you're paying the premium of I'm very defensive and compact, and I'm not that much slower than Zod, and I'm even more durable and killy when it's that go turn. So very interesting to see that being played in real time as someone who's a big Zod lover. These are just critiques of an Orc player that's looking at this as someone who likes both lists a lot, and each one of them has a tech that I like a lot. One has the mobile tank buster bunker mobile. The other one has Zodgra War Snagga, for example. But then both of them have gas. Both of them have big mechs. Both of them have Beast Snagga Boyz. Both of them have Mandos, right? Things that I think Orcs community can kind of conceal on, that is very important and interesting. So great job there. Of course, check out War Games Live. Leave a like here and there if you guys think we're doing a good job, and it's exciting to see. Luka, if you see this, let's give a shout out. Let's get a chat. If not, great job you get. Thanks for getting the Orcs another win. Whoa! Now let's look at what the live gets have got to say about. Oh, there's other cool big moments too in the game, but that's why you should watch it. A lot of other failed charges and fights for the home objective that were going on from Luka, and even Jonathan, he failed some heroics. There was a lot of big moments on that game. It was very exciting to watch, even me covering it to that degree. And when I think still I revealed some big moments, was still worth watching, because as an Orc player, you get to see Mandos getting involved, you see Storm Boys getting involved, you see trucks, you see wagons running around trying to charge people, which was of course a late game issue. People underestimate how much of an issue. It's not exactly as scary as a Land Raider Redeemer late game, but it is scary at late game, and that's what was happening there. The battle wagon was interacting. Such a great game. So I definitely highly recommend people go at least watch it. Find the timestamps at least on, like I said, bottom of 2 to watch the go turn and really get some good information, or just watch the deployment as well. So shout out to those gets. That was awesome to see. Now let's take a look at the polls. So as for the live polls, you guys got to do that now, of course, real quick. Let's go. Live gets. So it looks like Kult of Speed has pulled it off in the end. So to be specific, it was Kult of Speed, Sima. Okay, I know that was our boy. Johan, Joni. Sorry, I'm messing up his name. So let me pull that up. You get as I look at honorable mentions. So that's gonna be our boy right here at the Sami 40K GT. So let me pull that up. He gets as we look at the live chats. Let me see what you guys got to get right now. What's up, Greg? New member. Whoa! Keep an eye out for the after action report, because like I was saying for Luka's patience with his beast boss unit, me personally, when I show my after action report, I wasn't as patient with my beast snagga boy unit, and I ended up kind of not playing with them too wisely. So I really appreciated that he decided to do that and remembered how efficient that is. My squig's right here behind me trying to start a fight, but that's okay. So let's take a look. I'm gonna take some of these things down real quick. So that I don't get too packed with tabs and get lost in the sauce. But I was really excited for this Cult of Speed list, because I think It's gonna kind of inspire and motivate people to still play Cult of Speed, even if they don't have a full Cult of Speed collection. And I think this one's actually a little bit more realistic for a lot of different orc players, to be honest, this list. So excited you guys voted for it. Great job, in my opinion. But I also think those other orc lists I was showing is pretty sick as well. So of course, if you guys want to see those rewatch, gang, be sure you guys say something about that. Leave a comment because you guys do make an impact even to the rewatch, gang. So let's take a look. Oops, my goofy self. This was played. Oh, and I'm not sharing with you guys, am I? Yeah. So this was played in Finland. Okay, so they're playing on the WTC terrain. Let's go. So great job seeing that. Let's take a look at this Git's list. So as you can see, he went 4-0 before he took that loss. Very cool to see for this Cult of Speed list. But as some of you Gits shouldn't be surprised, we've seen some crumping going on and Git still getting stuck in because orcs are still orcs. So we have double units of beast bosses as the only characters. Actually an interesting concept because me personally, as I agree, my Cult of Speed list, which you guys will also see an extra report because that's the next one coming out after the War Horde one, but I only have a couple characters for their cheap points as well, and they're not the trikes. So even though the trikes are able to be played and interesting, there are archetypes and styles of Cult of Speed you can play without them, which here we see the Krumpen style, where he brings the beast bosses to get some value out of the wall. Of course, he's playing on the WTC terrain. They're more dense. He needs to be able to run through these terrain pieces, still get stuck in, reach dudes that are stuck in little corners and tight spaces, have a lot of OC. Really happy to see that with 2 10-man units of Snagas. But he also brought the triple units of max def copters for 18 def copters here, getting stuck in with all the DACA, the rockets, the spinning blades. But don't be miffed. Not only did he have 2 units of Minnows Gretchen to screen his backfield, because with this kind of list, there's no going back. There's no going back, right? With this kind of list, as you can tell, it's all forward momentum because this Git had 2 units of kill rigs as well, followed by 1 unit of commandos, 2 units of shock jump dragstas, 2 units of storm boys, and then 3 maximum size units of war bikers without the trikes. Interesting there. Now, my opinion from my firsthand playing with them when I've done these war bikes, though I like them a lot because the reactive move is pretty interesting and fun. They get their lance ability to fight. They feel pretty solid overall on the list. Is that when you have the trike, even though he's fast, he's just a huge base that gets in the way, helps sometimes messes up coherency, gives enemies easier lines of fire at you. Sometimes the nice sleekness of the bikers is what you're happy for instead of playing for the buggy bases. As you see, there's gonna be def copter bikes in the way. There's bases in the way, trying to get lines of fire to shoot. There's gonna be kill rigs in the way. So paying for the trike as well is gonna get in the way of all these other big units around the field. Now, shock jump jackstas, for my Cult of Speed experience, not only are they very fun to maintain your, let's say, either primary rotation, like what unit's going to hold that objective, or hold an area for secondary, but they're very fun for denying enemy reserves a lot of the time. So if your Mandos can go up and create space, sometimes your shock jumps will jump there as well, create even more of a bubble, so the enemy has to be pulled back even further. And they're just overall, though I'm not sure about 2, this Git was able to pull them off. They make up for the fact that everything else is going to get in the way as well, like I said. So the fact that you're just going to pick up this dude and be like, all right, I'm going to put it over here, and then I can pop a 4 pinball if I want. So very nice to see. Cult of Speed's always slept on, and all these guys can fall back, shoot, and charge. Not the kill rigs, right? Not the kill rigs, not the Snagas, not the Gretchen, but all these rest of these units. So they're going to be getting stuck in with a lot of ablative wounds. Then you got the Boyz for those hard to reach places. Kill rigs throwing a little bit of extra war tower support, giving +1 strength to random units like war bikers. So really fun list to see now. Some Gits are like, well, I can't get that many bikers, Coptas, or bikes. Well, if you're a Cult of Speed Git and you're crazy anyways, you're TTS or whatever you're printing or borrowing, whatever it can be. So great style of list, very fun to see. I've heard this from some top level players that were like considering Cult of Speed and even considering kill rigs. So I think 2 is that keen number. Not sure how this would go in a GW list per se to say. Terrain layout, because how the kill rigs are so huge, they can kind of get picked up and isolated, but this got stuck in. So let's take a look at this path to victory, guys. I was very excited to see Cult of Speed getting some results. So we have the Tau Empire with the Kaoyong. So we have Dark Strider, 2 Cadre Fireblades, a Commander Coalstar Battle Suit, and a Erythriel. Ooh, he came with the Breachers. So he has double units of Breachers and then a Strike Squad, 1 unit of Kroots, followed by some Pathfinders, double Stealth Suits for the 3-man unit, 1 unit of Vespid, 1 unit of Kroot Riders, double broadside suits, 1 knife fire battle suit, a Sunforge battle suit, a Piranha, a Riptide, Skyray gunship, and 2 Devilfish. Devilfish are going to have those breachers inside of them. They're really good at getting lines of long lines of fire and then getting good firepower on you with like a lot of small arms fire, which is about like 6/6, I think. And they can get buffs on that with their characters if they have them attached, what they do. Their Cadre Fireblades for additional shots. Nonetheless, Tau is one of those other armies that if they can go first, they have their infiltrators, they have a little cheap chaff that they're able to throw forward and kind of create space. But what I've done the Cult of Speed matchup into Tau, luckily, and between the amount of stuff you can just display and how they typically have to focus fire on something, it still behooves you to be very aggressive. So even though, you know, the more you wait on Tau and try to just outmaneuver them, the more they just pick you apart, create kind of move blocks where they want, funnel you into their firing lanes of death, and then push late game and just throw a bunch of stuff at you willing to die and just swing them objectives. So very important for you as an Orc to be highly aggressive here. And that's what he was. Kill rigs kind of go up, can soak up some damage. You still have the Koptas that are staging up. Of course, you're not just presenting your favorite assets to get shot, but in some cases, they're going to have worse lines of fire, or if that one unit has to be exposed like a Kopta unit, you can pop a 4 Binvuln, which even if they focus on it, I've gone through it, can withstand a lot of their damage. They don't have anything that's clean for 4 wounds a pop unless you're standing on an objective and the breachers maybe get off on you. But in this case, because you have Mandos, you have even the shock jumps, you can end up using the buggies, which I've done as well, or shock jumps in this case, where you can either use them to stop reserves from coming in, and or you can jump into firing lanes where the enemy wants to be next turn, or and end up kind of stopping them from actually getting shots off and deeper into your line. So could be very interesting. I think that matchup, as you can see, went very one-sided, 96-point win. Easier said than done, but Cult of Speed has a lot of the tools, because as you're moving up and charging and killing some dumb stuff, they can all fall back and do things. So it's very problematic, that multi-phase potential from Tau. You start picking up their little chest, touching their transport. They want to do stuff. Fill up the board with your bodies. It's great. It's a great fun time. Crumping little fish dudes. Then move into the second game, which was Necrons. So we have the Awakened Dynasty. So Luminar Suzeras, Emotech Stormlord, Scorpec Lord, triple Technomancer, followed by a Canoptic Reanimator, triple Canoptic Race. So we know he's just trying to be the meat. 1 unit of double units of Locust Destroyers. 1 is the minimum size, 1 is a 2-band unit. 2 big bricks of Scorpec Destroyers, and then 2 minimum size unit of Triarch Praetorians. So it came down to when I was really wondering how this would go, because these wraiths aren't getting picked up by anything too effectively in Johann's list. You know, on the WAAAGH turn, I think he could pull off killing, you know, one of them, potentially, because there's a mortal wound potential from this list a lot of the time. I think it's overlooked, between the Koptas flying over you, some grenades, a little bit of bomb squig. So they could hypothetically pull it off. But ultimately, if you're really looking for how that Cult of Speed list kind of runs, it does also come down to just having so much stuff that the enemy runs out of the effectiveness of killing them. So as long as the WAAAGH turn is on the go turn, you focus on his abilities to. Now, don't get me wrong, I know Wraith can kill you. I'm not crazy. I understand if you're on objective, Wraith can still crump you. But nonetheless, having 1 unit that activates kind of hard into Orcs isn't nearly as bad as having like 3 units activating into 3 Orc units, because sometimes those units can just pick up each unit on their own, or devastate it enough that there's not a good crackback. So a lot of OC from the Koptas, the Bikers, and they're not scared to reach out, kill some of these units, multi-phase damage them before they get stuck in, and then expect to fall back and possibly do it again, fight for the primary. I would like to see what the mission was, because easier said than done. You know, they do have solid buffs. You have Emotech to run around fighting on his own. The Wraiths will re-roll on an objective, I think, to wound. Not sure in this detachment. And then the Wraith. Now the destroyers, though, on paper they're scary. They can whiff as long as you don't let them go into your bikers necessarily. But 87-point win there. Love to see it. I'd like to know what happened there because that was one of the more interesting ones that I watched. And I was like, oh, that would be a kind of tough matchup if you're really thinking about how Orks like to play linearly. You got to be cunning get in that one. If you're playing Cult of Speed, you generally quite a cunning get. Then we go into his third game, which we have the Demic Incursion. So we have Be'lakor, a Bloodthirster, a Great Unclean One with the Female Pain, Cairo Fate Weaver, and then Lord of Change. Double unit of Nurglings, 1 unit of Plague Bearers, Beast of Nurgle, and double units of Flamers, 1 a min and 1's a pig. Cool thing about these guys, kind of for them, is that they're -1 to hit, and they have a 4-up invuln at all times. They are like 3 wounds a pop, which can be a problem, but if you have Def Coptas, now I do understand they're -1 to hit, but I've noticed still with my Def Coptas, at least some games more than others, popping sustain 2 when they get close enough kind of offsets that. Can still have the unit go off just enough to pick up these units somewhat more reliably, of course, because you have twin linked your mortal wound potential. But when it comes to demons, it's always, if I kill a couple of the big dudes enough and interact with too many of their small guys and fight on over the objectives, I'll have moral seed in them and they just won't kill me fast enough. And when you're running that many bikers and Def Coptas, and you still have the Boyz and you have the kill rigs, and they don't really have shooting to deal with the kill rigs, and your Snaggas can at least help you tear down one of those demons. Pretty tough matchup for that demon player. So 93-point win there. Love to see that. Then we go into this fourth matchup, which was the Dark Angels with the Stormlands Task Force. Now, it wasn't the new Rock gets, right? Which I'm gonna have to get one of those practice games in again for I've played against it, but I want to try with War Horde. So I want to again. So we'll see how that goes. But this was Stormlands in this case, so not the Rock. So not the counter charges in the -1, but he is advanced in charge. So still threatening style of matchup here. So we have Azrael, Lionel Johnson, triple Tech Marines, 3 minimum size unit of Assault Intercessors, 3 Deathwing Knight units, 3 land speedered vigilances. Well, I forgot. I don't even know what these dudes do, to be honest. I'm just gonna look at it. They're either like additional AP or like strip cover or something from what I remember, but I might be wrong. So I might as well just look, or we can look together. Actually, it's like what I just said, wasn't it? Shooting phase. I can shoot back at you. Okay, I've seen this more on the Dark Angels list. Okay, so this one is gonna be a little if you kill an enemy unit within 6 in their opponent's shooting phase within 6 of it, that this guy can shoot back. So that's actually somewhat interesting considering it does have the plasma battery. Actually, I can pull this up to you guys. Why am I doing that? You guys see it? Boom, there you go. Sorry, Gits. I should let you guys see. So there's a plasma battery here. So it's D6 +1, strength 8, -2 damage, or strength 9, -3 damage. T8, 3 wounds, as if I've been rolled, and then 10 wounds apiece. So interesting in that case. Nice. Then we have a scout. So a lot of redundancy here. Not that many things that are going on. From my Dark Angels experience, though I highly respect them as an army, as an orc, if I can get the angles and interactions to pick apart kind of their softer units and kind of dissect the army so they run out of gas, it helps a lot of the time. If I have to interact with the Deathwing Knights, Mortal Wounds are your friends. If you're playing War Horde, Fight on Deaths are your friends. And in this case, I think you're just having a lot of stuff will also help you. And still, there's mortal wound potential on this list too. So never underestimate how much all the bodies in OC can be for this kind of activations, because now the Deathwing Knights are somewhat scary. And I know these land speeder vengeances, of course, can get off on your bikers if you let them too early. But once everything starts getting stuck in and you have your 5-up invuln on, it's a really go turn. The amount of meat and bloodshed you're exchanging can kind of sometimes outpace the enemy. So even though it's definitely a very hard list, and depending on which mission it is, like I wouldn't love to play Purge to Foe against it necessarily. Love the great job pulling that W out with that style of list, right? Not too many things are popping the kill rigs there. So kill rigs can be kind of aggressive, start getting in the way, forcing fights. So happy to see that. And of course, Economic Armor can attempt one activation for one of those units. So you can essentially dwindle the Deathwing Knights enough that they can't finish your units fast enough, and you still win on primary. So take it as you wish, he gets, but great job there. And then we go into his last game where he did end up losing, where he went to the Chaos Knights. So there was one thing, is that yes, he could deal with some big stuff for the most part, but I don't know if he had enough anti-tank for this style of matchup, which is one of the most notorious things known for Cult of Speed, right? So we have triple Knight Despoilers with their Despoiler Valor battle cannons, which are insane volume. They have damage 3, they have long range shots on big thick bodies, and then triple baby carnivore knights with triple beast of Nurgles, triple Nurglings, and then one plague bear unit. So he can still even sticky either his home objective, or he can go out, sticky an objective, force you to want to come interact with that as well. All these Nurglings can get in the way and kind of try to infiltrate, and then Beasts of Nurgles are regenning if they're not getting killed on that same phase. So the typical kind of multi-phase damage that's coming from the Cult of Speed can kind of fall off there, where you can't really one-shot the snag a unit outside of the wall with any of your units too reliably, so then it's going to heal. It has primary OC, and it can sit on weird spots. It fights someone respectably, and then you still have the carnivores and such. So this would definitely be a tough matchup, but he did a pretty good job there still with the score, with 72 points, and he only lost by 1, so that's pretty insane, right? So even though it would still be a problematic type matchup, it's one of those things that once you kill, and if he chooses to kill, all that other trash stuff that is very susceptible to his Snagas and his small arms and the units that he still has remainder on the list, can the Knights Despoilers dislodge him fast enough? And in this case, tough matchup. He still did very well, but 1 point is some secondaries, maybe 1 second here and there. Could have gone either way. So great freaking stuff. I'm really glad we covered this list, because any orc that does this look good, where it goes 4-1 with this Cult of Speed hybrid list, has 1 point loss, should be taken into at least account and consideration for all those gets have been wondering about Cult of Speed and that the Beastnaga hybrid style that can happen, an archetype that we've talked about in the past, right? So we've talked about it in the How to Play Cult of Speed archetype before, so it's great to see that this finally came to fruition. Love to see it. Great job for the live chat for voting for this one. So remember, double beast bosses, the only characters, double snagas, and also people wonder sometimes why you don't pay for the truck boy enhancement, so to be able to move the truck, get out, attack you. Typically you're staging around the mid table anyways, and you have saturation of stuff. You can kind of find your way there, and it's pretty expensive, so people just tend to not pay for it. Double snaggers, 3 big bricks of Def Coptas, which is crazy for a Blade of Wounds and how much it takes for the enemy to dislodge them. Not reliable for offense, not always reliable for defense, but the amount of just bodies, wounds, and dice there are there means that the dice can go either way, and the enemy has to take into account and try to dislodge them. And for 160 points, it's insane value in Cult of Speed. So this many bodies, I just run with 2 big bricks right now because I'm lazy, but it's still been very important in those games where I'm just like, well, you finally committed to them, and I committed with them. I didn't care that they didn't do anything. You just presented your whole army to kill them, and now I'm going to take my pound of flesh in positioning on the table. So love the Def Coptas in that case. 2 Gretchen, because you cannot let people get behind you with this kind of list. Double kill rigs for the WTC delivery transport. Love to see that. Giving out some buffs, hopefully, to the bikers, maybe on one case for +1 strength. That'd be hilarious. 1 commando unit, double shock jumps. I thought that was pretty sick. Like I've said, I think this is how I typically use them in my games. Once in a while, they will precision out a character. I got 1 Gene Stealer character ever, and it was fantastic. I love it, and I'll never forget. And then 2 units of Storm Boys for the flash fast gets, because sometimes, man, I played Call of Speed without a Storm Boy unit, bro. That was annoying. Because you're so much stuff on the table, you can't get anywhere. And if you have just these smaller secondaries or positions you want to be in, moves and set things you want to set up, having a jetpack makes a huge difference because dang, you're not getting around the field any other kind of way. Trust me. And then 3 units of bikers, which are also going to be all up in the way, which are running similar to the Copta, where it's like, well, I have all these things you're not going to be able to kill. A lot of times people play the flanks with these guys, threatening to just run around and touch either their back line, and in that case, you're pulling reactives, and then you're getting stuck in onto objectives. Enemies coming to kill them, and they're like, oh, there's only 130 point unit for that many wounds, and then here I come with the rest of my army. So I love to see it. So much stuff, so much trash. I love playing standard lists that are trash and just not necessarily anything's too important. Everything here is somewhat threatening, but also disposable and redundant. So great job with this style. Love to see it, and love to see another version of Orks performing at an event. And thank you for chat for picking that one. So with that being said, that's it for WAAAGH Wednesday. Let me see what's going on with the live chats. You guys were going off. Thank you for all the support. Thank you, Wicked Joe, for being a legend on the chat. Like I said, for those 10 WAAAGH Tactic memberships, it means a lot. For the After Action Report, and yeah, he is Wicked Joe, and Joe is a legend for 2 years, meeting him at Adepticon, still around, traveling the country. It was a great job. Love to see it. Then we have chat. Chat's going off with the WAAAGH. So thanks, guys, for that. Let's leave some likes. Thanks for that. And I got the After Action Report coming. Like I said, I got the War Horde versus World Eaters one. Then I'll do a Cult of Speed one. And honestly, I'm thinking about doing posts and polls for like what you guys want to see me match up into, because I can set up some fun, interesting matchups. So let me know, and thank you for the support, because that definitely leads to those changes and those boosts and content. Of course, we also have the podcast coming out this Friday. Well, not really a podcast, it's a chat. I shouldn't say that. Live chat for October coming out this Friday, and we have the October special with the vote coming in with the most wanted orc in all of 40K finally being voted on and displayed for all to see. So love to see that. So with that being said, there's always one thing to keep in mind: is don't cross our wall, because we'll not get eval. Whoa.